into form, through form, back into form, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into form immediately, through form, out and back into the next form, through form, out and back into the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us as microcosmic beings, never ending, infinitely, never dying, simply jumping from one form to the next form, infinitely and forever. The form will expire. We will immediately jump into the new form in a nanosecond, because we are eternal beings, just like Amma, never ending, infinite and unlimited power, trying to express ourselves through these human forms. So we'll go out and back into the next form, go live through this form, come to a peak at the top, and then age out. The form will age out. Our microcosmic spirit will leave that form and jump back into the next form. Live through that form. Wear that form out. Leave that form and animate the next form. This is the cycle of existence for us, the microcosmic beings, the microcosmic expressions of the totality, the macrocosmic being we call Amma, endlessly and forever, jumping into form, living through these forms. The form wears out, cannot keep up with us, so we will jump from that form into the next form, endlessly and forever, living through these forms, not to be confused as being the forms. We simply jump from one form to the next form, live through that form. As the form ages out, we will simply transform into the next form, endlessly and forever. This is the cycle of our existence. How you doing, family? Welcome to another Bantu Morpheous workshop. Today is March 9th, 2021. I'm going to switch it up a little bit with this workshop video. Instead of me, and again, what we're doing is following up on this workshop is based on my book and my concepts in my book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief. We're going to follow up here with, instead of what I'm going to kind of switch it up today, I want to, instead of me just, continuing to repeat the things that I've been teaching in my book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief. I'm going to critique a YouTube video of one of my top analysts, Dr Oba D'Shaka, who is a phenomenal thinker and teacher. I believe he ran the African Studies Department, African American and Black History Department in, I believe it's, I'll get his bio and I'll put that in this video. I'll edit it in post-production. But I know he's coming out of Chicago, and I know he ran a African Studies Department in one of the major colleges there in Chicago, Illinois. But anyway, what I want to do here is I want to critique one of his movies. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing his video, and we're going to go ahead. I'm going to like stop it and give you my, what I'm going to do here is now show you where over the 45 years, as I've learned and put together this concept, what I'm going to do is show you in just about what I've been finding is that in every video that I now look at, I'm finding all kinds of correspondences where it further confirms the thesis of my book, which is to say that we are overall, that we are microcosmic spiritual beings, which is aspects of God, and we are put into these human forms repeatedly forever, in a cycle forever. In order to have a human experience, I do a cross-sectional analysis of all of these great analysts and teachers. I'm finding that more and more validation of my premise and thesis of my book. Over the millions of years, there's just the process of the microcosmic spiritual being is trying to express itself through this crude and imperfect, and the microcosmic being is a perfect spirit, because it's, of course, it's going to be perfect. It's coming from Ama, or what the Europeans call God, and everything about God is perfect, and Ama is perfect. So as an aspect or an expression of God, which we are as microcosmic beings, then we too, we are trying to express ourselves through an imperfect form, which is the body, the human body, which is the form, the vehicle that we use. And it is the only way to interface with this time-space continuum we call life or existence. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play Dr. Oba D'Shaka's video where he's talking about African humanism. What he's referring to is he's citing how African culture and African spiritual culture has provided models for just society, to further support the concept that we are spirits having a human experience. Now, he just happened to say that on this movie. And what I want to do is take this and go the next level. Let his video play, and then I'm going to make the correspondences. And I'll stop it when he mentions something which is going to be constant, because almost every aspect of what he talks about is further supporting and validating aspects of my book. Okay, so let's just go and get right on at it, and And let's see what Dr. Oba D'Shaka has to say.
This is Dr. Oba D'Shaka, and this is the 19th of the Dr. Oba D'Shaka shows. Apologize that we had a program scheduled for last week with Dr. Melina Abdullah. We had to reschedule. We'll let you know when that's happening. The topic for this morning is a topic that's dear to my heart, and I think to the hearts of our people as a whole. It is based on the mighty spirit that dwells within each of us. And the topic for this morning is Black or African humanism. We are spirits having a human experience, models for just societies. So we're going to be looking at the powers that dwell within us, the obstacles to expressing those powers, and how we draw on them to shape a stronger sense of identity, a stronger sense of our purpose in terms of our destiny, and drawing from that, models that we can use now that we can construct, that we can practice in our day-to-day lives, that will be in the future models that we can use as we create just societies. What you see in the back of me are symbols from Dogon philosophy. The outfit that I have on is a Dogon outfit. It's pictures African dancers who perform the mass ceremonies among the Dogon. And so I have these two beings in the back that are called pneumo twins, and they'll be integral to this discussion because we're going to be plunging into some of the deeper aspects of African deep thought or African philosophy. Next to strategy, African philosophy, which is spirit-based, is my first love when it comes to any subjects. And of course, spirit is beyond subject.
Now, what Dr. D'Shaka is talking about here is the two twins he's talking about is again, as I mentioned in my videos, duality, yin and yang, opposites. There's always two. Once you get into, and everything again he's talking about is the physical world. And he's talking about applying spiritual, or how spiritual energy, which is guided by what, as I said in my book, the intuitive intelligence. The intuitive intelligence is projecting thoughts that are coming from our subconscious or previous lives. And that continuity is constantly being expressed. And the intuitive intelligence, which I talk about in my book, is that with the intelligence has gotten so good at expressing itself through the physical form vehicle, the human form vehicle, that now it has the capacity to get the human form vehicle to write and record, so that when we reincarnate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, as it were, as far as setting up society's order, structure, and so on. And so this is a part of that. Well, these twin sculptures is a way of recording to remind or the intuitive intelligence as a part of the awakening process that I talk about in my book. And this awakening is more of a reminder of what we already know. But since every time we come into a new human form vehicle, what Amma did to get away from the concept of omniscience, which is knowing everything, Amma set up a scenario where an aspect of itself, which is us, is put into human form, and what it put in place in terms of structure to guarantee that it would not know in each incarnation. Amma couldn't even stop being infinite, and that's why we constantly reincarnate, because we are aspects of Amma, and Amma is infinite. So we will infinitely, constantly reincarnate. And because everything Amma does is infinite. And so everything Amma creates is infinite as far as aspects, direct aspects of itself, which we are. We are direct aspects of Amma, more so than other animated beings or human or other animated forms like cats, dogs. They are animated forms. That's why we just call them animals, right? But human beings are a higher level. This is what I talk about in my previous lectures. So duality is everywhere, is throughout everything, every aspect of everything that Amma created. And the first duality that Amma created was us, the microcosmic being. That is the first reality that Amma created, that is of a spiritual level. Now, as far as I know, we're the only ones that are aspects of Amma spiritually, intuitively, that comes out of pure consciousness. Amma is consciousness. We as microcosmic beings are conscious and aware, because that is an aspect of consciousness. Consciousness is the totality, the way, as far as I understand it. I may stand corrected, but basically from what I've been taught, consciousness is the totality, and we individual, or we who have the illusion of individuality or separation, as it were, are conscious. In other words, we consciously project thoughts. And again, the three types of thoughts are intuitive thoughts that come directly from Amma itself, through us, the microcosmic being, okay? And we then, that is projected into our consciousness and our conscious mind and our awareness. Intuitively, that's the way the insight, and it's coming from our past lives. That's the subconscious, intuitive intelligence that's managing that process of making sure that we pick right up where we left off once the awakening happens, or the reminding happens in each lifetime. Okay, so once that process has been put into place, now we can move on to the next level. And then we now can consciously project our own thoughts, which will operate the current. Right now, everything that's happening is happening in the now time, in the now aspect of existence. That's where we consciously are, okay, as microcosmic beings. So as microcosmic beings, we have access to the power of creation itself by controlling our repeated thoughts, repeated visions, repeated emotions, okay? And again, the duality is put into place. The first duality is Amma and us, the microcosmic being. Now, on this plane here, which this plane exists within Amma, the microcosmic being exists within Amma. and the time-space continuum exists within Ama. Okay, all of the time-space continuums, of which I believe there are multiple endless numbers of dimensions of time-space continuums, but this is the one we're in right now. Okay, and so the second duality is us, the microcosmic being, and the human form vehicle. Okay, now here's where the doo-doo hits the fan. Once the microcosmic being animates the human form vehicle at conception, the human form vehicle now brings all the doo-doo to the game. Because the human form vehicle, unlike the microcosmic being, is the opposite of the microcosmic being. The microcosmic being is what? Perfect. Okay. Microcosmic being can do what? Manifest, make things manifest. The microcosmic being can also is consciously aware that it is a being separate from the the human form vehicle when it's properly awakened, okay, and reminded of this structure, okay. So the human form vehicle, but the human form vehicle, and let me go back and say, the microcosmic, a spiritual being, microcosmic being can project its own thoughts, and those thoughts, when repeated, will automatically operate the machine of creation, of manifestation, which we call the law of attraction and the law of auto suggestion. That is the process by which we make things manifest in our environment relative to the microcosmic being. But the microcosmic being is infinite. We don't die. That's the other most important aspect of the microcosmic being. Like Ama, we are omnipresent, which means we don't die. We just exist everywhere at the same time, but except this the difference. We don't exist everywhere at the same time. We only exist in this particular time-space continuum at a particular time, which is where we are now. We become aware, we become alive, we animate the human form vehicle, and that locks us into a unique and particular perspective, which is the opposite of Ama. Ama has no particular perspective. Ama is everywhere all the time at the same time. And we are the opposite. As the microcosmic being, we are the opposite of Ama in that respect. This is very critical for you to understand. And this gives clarity and structure, clarity of structure to existence, okay? And you have to understand this fundamental, basic, immutable structure and law, okay? So that means, though, as a microcosmic being, we have the same power that Ama has of the ability to create. When Ama creates only once, but when we create, we create repeatedly. See, we're the opposite of Ama. Ama only does things once. We do things repeatedly. We come back repeatedly. We reincarnate repeatedly. Okay. You see the duality. There's a duality. That's that primal duality, and then the secondary duality is the microcosmic being and animating the human form at conception, and the human form is the other part of our duality, as which is the opposite of the microcosmic being. Okay, let me finish up with the opposites of what between the microcosmic being and the macrocosmic being, which is Ama. Omniscient, can omniscient, which means can knows everything. Okay, Ama knows everything all the time at the same time. See, but we're the opposite. The microcosmic being, we don't know everything all the time at the same time. We have structure. We have a backstop. We're smaller than the macro. So we don't get it all. We only get a little piece of it, and it flows. That because Alma wanted it that way. Alma don't want to know everything all the time. So through us, through our living, we are, we have that structure and that perspective of being here and only knowing a little bit at a time, as opposed to Alma that knows everything all the time. See, so that's the other aspect of us, omniscience. We don't have omniscience. We have intuitive intelligence, which trickles data to us, and we're on that continuum of living and knowing and learning. Alma doesn't learn. Alma already knows everything. There's nothing for Alma to learn. We do the learning. That's why we're here. That's why we exist. So Alma can experience what learning would be like, but I can't even finish the statement. It just doesn't work. We do the learning, period. Alma doesn't learn. Okay, again, opposites, duality. Okay, the power to make things manifest. Alma doesn't repeatedly manifest things. Alma created everything. One time that was it, it's game over for Alma, not us. We repeat things. We have to repeat our thoughts, and we have to repeat things enough, and then we will we manifest things slowly and gradually. After the machine that Alma has extended to us from itself is the machine that manifests stuff. I call it the manifestation machine. Okay, and it makes stuff. All it does is make stuff, but it doesn't make everything. You got to repeat over and over and over again, because we are not on the level of Alma. We don't have the power of Alma. We have to repeat to build up power to move the machine, because that's the safety mechanism that Alma put in place. So if we don't repeat, then the machine don't give you what you want. If you don't have clarity, the machine don't give you what you want. And whatever you want gotta work in harmony with the rest of the society and all the other microcosmic beings that are expressing themselves through human forms. See, so that creates a whole dynamic where you can't get what you want right away, zip, bang, boom. Okay? Unless you come back a whole bunch of more times than all the other microcosmic beings that have come back. This is my concept. Okay? And so, therefore, that's how it go. All right. So, but this is the thing. That's how we create. But we create by repeating our thoughts. So you got to be very careful what you repeat. Okay. You got to be very careful what you repeat. You got to control your thoughts. You got to control your mind space. Okay. What are the other three things? Well, so we covered omniscience. We covered omnipresent, because here's omnipresent. Oh, and we covered omnipotence. Okay, omnipotence is the ability to create. So now we're going to cover omnipresence. Okay, we covered omniscient. We don't know everything. Only Alma knows everything. So now we're going to cover omnipresence. So here it is. Alma is not everywhere. Alma is everywhere all the time at the same time. Not us. Microcosmic being, no. We're only here right now. For this 100-year period, we are watching through and experiencing this time-space continuum here, now. And everything we do will always be in the now. When we think about the past, we got to think about it in the now. When anything we visualize and what we see ourselves having in the future, when it gets here, it will get here now. It won't get here up there. It will get here right here now. It won't get here in the future and some time before. See, time matters to us because we're in the human form vehicle. The human form vehicle is subject to time. Even the microcosmic being is not subject to time. That's why we don't die. That's why when the body sleeps, we dream, we keep visualizing, we keep seeing things, we keep experiencing memories and projected futures and dreams and visions of what we want to experience. We go on and experience things on a metaphysical level, even when the physical form vehicle is out of the game. That's another duality that we have as microcosmic beings. We can experience the physical, we can actual physical, and then we can we can experience imaginary physical, metaphysical existence. This is why I'm saying, as a microcosmic being, we got it going on, folks. And if the education system would teach you that at a young age, the quality of your life would be monumentally different, better, more secure, more confident, more joyful, and more exciting, because you understand may not necessarily master, your capacities and your abilities, but you will begin to tap into them and get excited, and this just brings just such a beautiful quality to life when you understand these things. All right, let me go ahead, because I want to go ahead and follow up on this. But the two images you see there in Dr. Oba D'Shaka's over his shoulder, those two entities are the symbolic images of yin and yang, positive and negative, and in this case, the feminine and the masculine. Okay, and the convergence of the two and how they balance out, and they create what they call, again, the overriding thing is ma'at, which is balance, is what we're seeking to always maintain in everything that we do, to maintain a more peaceful and harmonious existence here. And what Dr. Oba D'Shaka here is going to do is talk about how we were thrust into imbalance because we're dealing with a non-spiritual culture, which is derived out of the ice. These are the ice cultures, the equivalent of the ice people, which were in the Avenger, in Thor. They talk about the ice people, and people who have come from ice are cold-blooded, not compassionate, vicious, demented, mental, because the ice is cold. The sun is the opposite. It's warm, but it's so warm it will burn you up. So what we have to do is find the middle path. The folks who are the folks who are culturated by the ice, we call them Europeans. Some they call themselves white, which is a myth. They're nothing but mutated Africans who got caught in the ice and got mutated even further. And I talk about that in my other videos. But I just want to make that clear, that what Dr. Oba D'Shaka is talking about is how we can rebalance ourselves after being, for many of us, like I'm an African who was born in America. So I'm an African American, and so I've been conditioned, trained, and traumatized into accepting a false culture, which is riddled with unbelievable corruption and just backwards, just unbelievable nonsense. Because you got to remember, they came out the caves last. So they're so corrupt and so jacked up and imbalanced. Their pineal glands are all jacked up. They've been out of the sun too long. You got to remember, they belong in the sun. All human beings belong in the sun. Okay? The body, the human form vehicle, is designed to function in the sun. Now, unless they're albino, then they tend to be more toward caves and shaded areas and colder climates. And that's duality again. That makes sense. I don't think they don't have to be bad, but it's just that because the way they were created over hundreds of thousands of years, they're Africans who got mutated, and that mutation has demented them in the sense that they're very objective. They see things as things. They don't see the spiritual. They don't see the spirit of Amma in all things like we do, because we never went in the caves. We didn't lose that ability to see Amma in all things. They did, because they felt, because the ice was very brutal, and they felt like Amma turned its back on them. because they were thrust into the ice and they were made to become these brutal barbarians and cannibals. And we're talking the ice age that was very serious, like I mentioned in the last movie, hundreds of degrees below zero, 100 degrees or a little bit more than that. And you can't wet yourself, you can't bathe. Your nose gets thin and you lose all the melanin in your system. You were already albino to begin with, and then you get caught in the ice, so you become even more albino because now albinos are mating with albinos. So it's really bad. And you wind up becoming this demelanized, demented, mutated African. So they lost a lot of stuff and they became more left-sided, more segregative, more objective. They're not spiritual. They don't even understand what spiritual is anymore. They have to be brought back into that whole knowledge and that whole wisdom. They lost all of that. So, and they're jealous of the ones who stayed out in the sun. So there's a hatred and a jealousy there. There's an anger and there's an anger with God itself, because they believe God turned its back on them. And so therefore they're angry with the planet because the planet turned its back and thrust them into the ice. So it's when you're demented, you start getting angry at all, because you look for people to blame. You look for anything to blame for your situation instead of just saying, well, it is what it is. Let's make lemonade out of lemons. They are way beyond that. These folks are, and they're not even conscious of their anger. Okay, they can't even. They're so mentally demented. They cannot comprehend, that why they feel the way they feel. They can't even rationalize it. They have not been properly, because the education system has been so bad for so long. They were not allowed to come to grips and face this truth about themselves. And now with the awakening coming now, they're having to face this truth, and their religion, which is a total lie and a con job, they have to face that's been a lie all along, and the truth of that. Then they have to face their political system. They have to face the fact that they are not superior to anybody. In fact, they're the opposite. They're the lowest, last, lost, most corrupt, demented, twisted. And the only way they're going to get right if they mate with other people of color. And they don't want to see that. They don't want to be made extinct, because they believe their albinism is normal, and they don't understand it's not. Everything in nature goes against them, because they burn, they get cancer, they get all kinds of things. They're human form, but see, they're hung up on form because they have no spiritual connection. They have to be retaught, retrained. And that's what we're trying to do for them. But they're so angry at nature and so angry at God and so jealous of us. These are the three things that's driving everything that they do. The first and foremost, they're angry at God. They're angry at nature, okay? And they're jealous of people of color. Now you gotta keep that in the back of your mind and understand that motivates. And then the fourth thing that they have of their, that motivates them to do what they do is they're terrified of being extinct, because they've actually been conned into believing that white is actually a race and something worth saving. They don't see it as a mutation, as a mistake. And now that's another thing makes them, they can't accept that concept, that they are a mistake, that albinism is recessive. But everything in genetics tells them, everything in medical field tells them, everything in nature shows them that they are a one-off. They are recessive, because if they were dominant, the moment they made it with something else, they would have an albino child. And they can't. Every time they mate with an Asian, or every time they mate with an African, the child comes out African. It never comes out wholly albino. It'll come absolutely black, or a blend of black. See, that tells them right there they're recessive. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing dealt with this 30 years ago, folks. 30 years, close to 35 now. I studied the Melanin Conference, ISIS paper. Get a copy of the ISIS papers, folks, and look at the copyright of the book. That's how long it's been out. This has got to be bucking up on 30 years, because I've studied that back in the 1990s, 1980s and stuff. Come on, folks. This is what I'm talking about. They know this. You don't know it, and that's why I'm doing these videos. Let's go see what Dr. Oba D'Shaka says.
It's everything. You know? So you're in for a ride this morning. The real thing that we'll be exploring is how we can draw from the mighty spirit that dwells within us to gain a deeper sense of self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is really the basis for all knowledge. You can know a lot about everything, but if you don't know self, then you're not even going to know what's relevant to apply or how to apply what you know.
Okay, so now he's talking about self. The self he's talking about is the microcosmic being. Okay, know thyself. That's what Professor Dr. Naeem Akbar talks about. Know thyself. That self they're talking about, that's the microcosmic being that I'm talking about in my book. And Dr. Francis Cress Welsing brought up the melanin concept in the ISIS papers that was printed back in 1991. So it's 29 years. Actually, it's 30 years as of this year, 2021. 30 years. Okay, let's go on.
And the two selves we're going to be dealing with today is the self of African identity or Black identity, but particularly African identity, and destiny. Identity deals with how you identify yourself as a people. Destiny, in the African conception of things, deals with the gifts that reside inside of each of us.
Okay, now he's talking about the gift that he's talking about is the gift that the human form is born and with, as in other words, as in terms of diversity, because every human form typically has some unique gift, and there may be several forms like it that have similar unique gifts. There's no everyone is exactly the same, but some may have more of that type of gift and some may have less of that type of gift. This is just like a range. You always have a range, okay? And could have hundreds of thousands of people that have the same gift, but if you don't, it's if a tree falls in the forest and you're not there, it doesn't exist. It didn't happen. Okay, so it's that kind of geographic location. If you're near it, you would know about it. So in this case, with the communication we have nowadays, the sophistication and of the technology that we have, we can know about all other people. And the communication is so sophisticated that the world has now become smaller. You don't even have to physically go to a place. We have the kind of communications where we can visually and auditorially through this hearing, the sound and communication, we can communicate with each other on the other side of the world. Okay, so that's allowed us to be aware, and it does a number on our mental state, because the human form vehicle now has created tools that allows it now to experience closer relationships with other people on the other side of the world. And so that has expanded quite a bit in terms of the awakening and moving the human race forward. Okay, so I just want to bring that point out, that everything he's talking about is the physical human form vehicle. Okay.
And so it's going to be about how we tap into these two realities. We know we have a problem of tapping into the issue of who we are, that is, as African people, because we live in a world that is controlled by those who have defined us out of history. That's one of the first things that oppressors do, is try and take you out of your history and stick you under theirs.
Okay, now this is another aspect of why I created, I did this book, The Anatomy of Existence and the Power of Belief. What he's talking about now is more in sync with the power of belief and controlling other human forms' beliefs by defining every aspect of their environment and and therefore their reality. Your current sense of now is impacted and is defined by. Okay, and this defining thing is very important. Like I said in my previous movies, I want you to be in a position where you define everything about you, for yourself. And you pick and choose what you're going to allow to come into these eyeballs and what's to go in, what goes inside of these ears, and what you read and what anybody tell, especially when they're telling you about you. You want to make sure that is one of the most educated, accurate, honest person that's guiding you like what I'm doing. See, I don't want nothing from you. I just want you to be the best you can be. So I'm the best kind of guide you can get, because I don't want nothing from you. See, because as far as I'm concerned, you are me in another form, another body vehicle. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the best I can give you, because I'm already good to go. Because see, I got this. See, I'm not blinded. I'm not tricking. I'm not drinking no Kool-Aid. I'm not buying into white supremacy. I don't believe white people are better than I am. I don't believe, and I don't believe it's not about better. It's about better at whatever I do. I'm a teacher. I'm better at teaching. I'm better at focusing. I'm better at staying on target. I'm better at never giving up. See, I'm better at getting the biggest bang for the buck. I'm better at that because I ain't ever gonna give up on that. And I know that's my gift. Okay. But so I want you to find out what your gift is. But I want you to find out, because you have such a wealth of knowledge and insight and wisdom that I'm articulating for you by going through this video series with you. Okay. And again, the key thing is defining. These Europeans crawled out of the caves, these mutated Africans. And I always want to say that because I don't want anyone to think of them as inhuman. That's not what this is about. This is not a competition. And this is not about mind games and us and them stuff. I'm really trying to get us away from us and them. But we've been so knee deep in us and them for the last 4, 5, 6,000 years, because when they crawled out the cave, baby, they came out vicious, mean, filthy, demented. And I'm not calling them names. I want to give you, see, in order for us to grow and move forward as a race, as a human race, as a human people, we have to be honest about our mistakes. We have to be, and it's not a mistake. It's just about, hey, I got to articulate for you what happened. This is the history. This is what happened to these people. So I don't want you to be angry at them. You should feel sorry for them. But see, before you can get into sorrow and compassion for them, you got to protect yourself from them, because they are projecting a mentally ill, demented, warped a definition of themselves and us. They're trying to redefine us, just like Professor Oba D'Shaka said, out of our reality, out of the truth of what we are, outside of that, and project In other words, distract everybody because they are ashamed of what they are. They want to distract you because they don't want you to find out what I'm telling you right now. What happened to them? And this was just bad luck. You could call it bad because this is what happened to them. It was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they were already albanized, and all of the archaeological and anthropological evidence confirms everything that I'm telling you. And I didn't make this up. This is what I read in the anthropological books that white men have done. Look at the white man and the Iceman Inheritance. Read that book by this guy. And I'll get the name and I'll post it up on in post-production. White Iceman Inheritance. They tell you about that's a white dude that's talking about it. It's not me. Dude a mutated African who happens to be called himself white, and they're trying to clean it up. Dr. Batalora, she's trying to clean it up. They woke up and they found out what's going on. So just because a person happens to be a mutated albino, that don't mean they can't wake up. Because again, this is the microcosmic infinite being that is expressing itself through these human forms. So they're just as powerful and infinite in their capacity to make this human form comply. See, but in order to make this human form comply, we all have to have the same education and get rid of this competition and get rid of the shame and the blame game. We got to get rid of that. And we got to face history and say, yes, you might have been born into this form, this mutated African form, but that don't make you a bad person. You can get it together, but you got to be honest. You got to teach them. They got to be honest, and they got to, like I said, you got to make this form do what you want it to do. That's what I'm trying to push here. Once you find out the truth about your human form, this ain't personal. I could have been born in one of them human forms. And I'm gonna tell you, if I found out that that's what I was in the past, I ain't gonna waste no time trying to convince you about no goddamn lies. I'm gonna get on the ball with trying to make sure that I clean this shit up. Excuse my French. And when I say clean it, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. If I'm white and I'm jacked up like that, I'm gonna get on the horse and get to work. That's how I roll. I don't care what it is. If I find out that my people are jacked up from the floor up, then I get to work making sure I clean up that floor. And I start educating as many of them as possible and say, listen, we have been barbarians. We got caught in the ice. It's not Africans' fault. It's not God's fault. God set everything up and it is what it is. We just happen to be on this planet. And if you come away from form, if you stop identifying with the white form or the black form or this form, just because I'm a Usain Bolt and I can run good and I got good smile and a great physique and a beautiful body, don't get hung up on that form, because this form is temporary. And you only get 100 years and this form is gone, you're gonna be in the next form. So you need to be about the business of learning, how can I define my next form? Is there a way I can define through the use of the law of attraction and auto-suggestion that I can define my next life? See, this is the stuff that we got to get into learning, folks. This is the frontier of where the awakening is pushing us to. That we can get away from this stupid race game and let's start focusing on what can we do to make sure my next life is better. Now that I'm awakened and I understand that I am a microcosmic being having a human experience, and I'm never going to die, and I'm just going to keep coming back into the next form and the next form and the next form forever, then I got to get into making sure that I come into the next best form. I got to get into mastering my skills and see what can I do to control and make sure I come into the next best form. That's what this is about. Okay, let's go on.
There's an old saying those who control the present will distort your past. And so part of the struggle for identity is a struggle for seeing ourselves through our own eyes.
And that's absolutely true, which means we have to start defining stuff for ourselves. But Professor Philippe Matthews is going to tell you about trauma and how trauma may create some more challenges to us being able to clearly define ourselves. We have to first get clear. And that's why I use Dianetics, and I suggest Dianetics as one of the tools to help you get clear. Okay. But what Dr. Oba D'Shaka talked about how people would take your past and try to redefine it in the future. That's not necessarily, everybody doesn't do that. But he's right about that. You have to be aware. But if you don't know the truth about yourself, which is what I'm giving you in my book, even Dr. Oba D'Shaka doesn't do what I do. They don't tell you that get away. I kind of apply what Eckhart Tolle teaches. The form vehicle is a dumb brute, and you gotta dominate it and control it with the intuitive intelligence of the microcosmic being. See, because that's what this is all about. The microcosmic being is trying to extrude itself through these forms. And what Dr. Oba D'Shaka doesn't say is that when you get into this defining thing, see, the human form vehicle and with its instinctive intelligence, it's trying to define shit too. And we got to make sure that, you don't call no shots. You do as I tell you to do. I'm the intuitive intelligence. I define use morality, principles, decency. We ain't gonna let you come in with your knee-jerk brute mentality and start defining nothing. You just do as you're told. And see, that is the first thing with Professor Oba D'Shaka. He's talking about other demented people who are trapped in their human form vehicles because they let their human form vehicles get out of control because nobody woke them up when they were 7 years old, 8 years old, 14 years old, 19, 16, 17. You got to have somebody wake you up and tell you, listen, hey, you are a microcosmic being having a human experience. You don't die. That thing you riding around in, you got to put your foot up its behind. And you got to totally dominate and take control of that. You are not the body. You're using a body for now. You give it some of what it wants, but for the most, dominate means for the most part, you make it do what you want it to do. That don't mean every single thing that it does, you making it do it. You give it some of what it wants. You know, sexually, it may be whatever way it is. You give it some of that, but you dominate and you control how much of that it's going to get. Because if you let it get out of control, it could kill the body and mess up your whole ride. You don't die. The body die. It don't give a shit. And the body don't think. The body is not rational. The body is not sane. The body will only be as sane as you train it to be. You have to train this body. Body works on habit, repeating. That's why everything we do in this time-space continuum works on these cycles of constant repetition. Got to understand that's the nature of where you are. The nature of this human body form vehicle, that's the way it works. You got to, like a pet, like a dog, you have to constantly repeat, blow a whistle, repeat, blow a whistle, repeat, blow a whistle and repeat. Tell it what to do, blow a whistle and tell it what to do. And after a while, you're gonna do is just blow the whistle, boom, it knows what to do. Okay, you gotta that's just how this structure works. See, that's what I talk about in my book. Most people don't talk about that. They get into the political, social stuff, and it kind of, if you don't know this foundational stuff that I'm talking about, you'll get lost. And I don't want that to happen. Okay, let's move on.
That is a struggle for drawing from the best of our past so that we can have a sense of who we are, a knowledge of self. And so we have been trained in the Western world to worship the European through distorted views of their history, their culture, their literature, their art, their science, their technology. And therefore, we are taught to center ourselves on that and to despise whatever has come out of Africa. We have a lot of Black people that don't want to deal with Africa because they have been presented with a negative picture of Africa. It's not that Africa is negative, but it's the false Tarzan image.
Now, exactly, he's absolutely right. This is called conditioning. Or how do you become conditioned? By repeated movies and pictures and imagery and people talking and saying things and embarrassing and ridicule and things like that. And it's a, like I said, it's a matrix of things hitting you from so many different sides. And this is what a corrupt human form will do. And it is a master at this. And it's been mastering this thing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. And so you got to understand what you were born into, especially if you're Black. See, but you can come out of this and free yourself within seconds if you just totally understand what's been going on and how the human form vehicle is, and you don't make it personal, you make it business. See, it's a business. You have to be about the business of putting this human form vehicle in its place. And you got multiple matrix of levels of that work that has to happen. But you don't want to get bogged down in it because you don't want to start, you want to start using your ability to auto suggest and law of attraction, draw images with colors and things and visions of what you see yourself as already being or having. And you got to keep going there and repeatedly projecting that vision. And I talk about that when I talk about the different thoughts. But all of this is related to what what Dr. Oba D'Shaka is talking about, defining everything for yourself. Okay? And I mean, you got to be brutal about that. You could, because you're coming out of trauma. You're coming out of miseducation. You're coming out of a mass media matrix of multiple layers of Black people even thinking, and they totally have no idea what the hell is going on. They got a few dollars and they just get lost in their dollars and their money, but they don't understand the trauma. They don't understand the false definition that they have of themselves and of what is right and what is good and what is balanced and what is decent. See? And then you have, on top of that, you have your cultural norms and your cultural desires and your cultural choices that you prefer, your cultural preferences, actually what I meant to say. Because there is also, that's what I'm saying, it's a matrix. Because a normal preference can be guided by a subconscious conditioning that you don't even know. So now you think that it's a normal natural preference, and then that may not necessarily be. You got to look at the history of how did your people get to prefer the things that they prefer. Like a lot of people eating pig feet, which comes out of what? The enslavement process, and that's the only food that they would give you. After they took the ham hock and the leaner parts of the pig, so they would give you the snout, the feet, the tails, the guts, the bowel movement intestines that nobody else would eat. So they would give that leftover to the enslaved Africans. See? And but if you know the history of it, you wouldn't eat that stuff. You know it's not the best part of the pig. Now, if you were on an island somewhere starving to death, you eat that to survive, to get you by until you can do better. Okay? But you can think like that once you know the truth. Okay, let's move on.
Protected by are oppressive. And so then if you have a negative image of your past, it will give you a distorted and negative image of yourself.
Okay, now, but again, you got to remember, these mutated Africans are oppressing African people and white people too. Because white people think that they're not impressing them because they're too busy focusing on us. But when they wake up, they're going to see that these are rich white people who want to perpetuate this myth of white supremacy. They're pressing it on them. And if they step out of there and try to go against white supremacy, they will kill them just as fast as they kill us. Ask the lady that the guy ran over with the car, Heather Heyer. Okay, the cop they just killed in DC on the 6th of January. That was just last week. Oh, they'll kill a white dude in a minute. That going against white supremacy, oh, they'll kill him in a heartbeat. He's messing up their ride. Let's move on.
So part of the freedom of the mind, body, and spirit is gaining an understanding of who we are, going down to our roots. But many of us don't think this is necessary. And please believe me, we are all that we have ever been. And if we don't know what we have been, then we are almost doomed to either draw the worst part or draw on an image of us that has nothing to do with reality. And this then puts us on what I call automatic pilot, where once you've internalized someone else's history, thoughts, literature, philosophy, culture, you can be put on remote control and don't have to be told what to do.
And this is what conditioning does to you. It puts you on it puts you on autopilot, where they say that you won't have to, after you get somebody totally brainwashed. Conditioning is another way of saying brainwashed. Once you have somebody completely brainwashed, you don't have to tell them to go to the back door. And if there's no back door, they will cut a back door in the back of the building because that's how brainwashed they are. And they talk about this is a psychological fact. But what it is, it's again, they know that the human form vehicle, when traumatized, can be conditioned or brainwashed into doing things that put it on autopilot, and the microcosmic being that is within, it has the power to stop it, but it has to first know what's happening. And what they've done now, they've created such a matrix of confusion and diversion and misdirection and miseducation that if you don't understand what has happened, you won't be able to see it. But the moment you understand, you know the history of what has happened, you can immediately see it, and therefore you can immediately avoid it. You don't need to stop it. You'll never start it. You'll never buy into the con. You won't even react. We say, please get out of here. I'm not falling for that. I'm not wasting now one nanite of energy. I'm not even going to waste my time to react to it. See, once you're awakened and you're aware, you won't even react to it, and you'll see it coming. Let's move on.
And this is particularly true of the more miseducated blacks among us. And we call this stage assimilation. And this is something that in the sixfold stages of mental freedom that we'll get into again later, we have to overturn. And I said before, I was one of those. I was programmed to think someone else's thoughts without knowing it. And that was a part of my awakening, coming to the realization that I had become a remote control, automatic pilot, double O soul Negro.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. I'm going to pause this here. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come on back. Again, this is Bantu Morpheous, and this is my workshop on the anatomy of existence and the power of belief. And we are reviewing and critiquing Dr. Oba D'Shaka's YouTube presentation.